things the middle class can't afford to buy. The economy is making American society increasingly poor, and there are things that the middle class cannot access, even some of the most basic. Crisis, inflation, and the same division of classes every time makes the middle class have access to less things, be it some basic things like housing, food, and clothing, as well as other things that in past decades were unthinkable that cannot be accessed. In this video I am going to tell you all this and more. Why can't the middle class afford to pay for those things anymore? How could it be solved? You will know in seconds. Before starting the video, I invite you to leave a like and subscribe to my channel to see more content like this. Without further ado, let's start with the video. Let's face it, things aren't the way they used to be anymore, and we don't have to go back to the 50s, where everything was accessible. Less than 2 decades ago, all the basic things were accessible: a comfortable home, food, clothing, and some tastes that today can be considered a luxury for the middle class. Although the world crises end up affecting the American economy without remedy, everything subtly changed so that the middle class begins to settle for less and less, even when working twice as much as before. Even a quality education for children, a fairly decent car, among other things, is already something that is a luxury to have, and if they want to obtain them, the middle class should get a credit card, or drown in debt or mortgages. Being lucky enough to live in one of the most economically powerful countries is already a title that has little weight today, and in order to get ahead, you sometimes have to put in an inhuman effort. Of course, it's sad to say all this, but it's a harsh truth. As I have mentioned before, having a car is already a luxury, and not only buying it is in itself giving large amounts of money, because then you have to count the gasoline costs that sometimes amount to absurd numbers. This is because there is a strong oil and gas crisis, which is why these prices are always higher than what they should normally cost. Also, cars always break down. Even if you take care of them with all the love in the world, there is always something wrong, and the repairs at the mechanic are usually, as with gasoline, tremendously high and absurd in some cases. According to the Federal Trade Commission, a new vehicle has a median price of around $30,000, and when you compare the high sales price, taxes, interest, and auto insurance with the median household income, it's obvious why new vehicles are increasingly unaffordable. Obviously, there is the option to access a used car, but let's be real, if you buy something used, we will spend many dollars on repairs, so we will enter the same loop. Another vitally important thing that the middle class cannot access is a simple apartment. We can see hundreds of videos on YouTube about people who rent a small apartment in New York or other major cities, and that can also cost hundreds of dollars per month. And we don't even mention the idea of buying a house, because that in today's society is already impossible. It is said that this is the only generation in history for which it is completely impossible to afford to buy a house, unless they go into debt for years, which does not make much sense in practice. Renting in a central location is impossible. You must have a job where you earn thousands of dollars a month, and on top of that, which is already difficult, you must put up with sleeping in a totally reduced place. All efforts seem pointless. That is why families and young people live too far from the cities to afford relatively cheap rent. Vacations are another of the many things that the middle class can no longer afford. If we mention a family with 1 or 2 children, it is almost impossible to be able to pay for vacations, and a person who lives alone cannot afford it either, because they have to use that money for other emergencies at the moment. Travel and stay expenses increased a lot, added to the crisis. It is better that that money be invested in something more important than in a well-deserved vacation, which you will not be able to fully enjoy. Paid vacation leave is another benefit that U.S. employers are not required to provide, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics found that the number of companies doing so voluntarily decreased over a 20-year period. In 1992, 82% of workers received paid vacation days, but only 77% received benefits in 2012. Both families and people living alone have to settle for enjoying those vacations in the solitude of the house. And if you plan to go on vacation anyway, some save years to be able to do it, and other people pay it in installments. Something that does not make much sense, since for months you will be paying for something that you already did. Something totally sad. Undoubtedly, a visit to the doctor or dentist, among other things related to health, is something that the middle class can no longer think of affording. There are many countries where healthcare is public and financed by the state, but the United States is one of those countries where healthcare is not public, and in fact it is quite expensive. Doing basic things like a set of teeth or replacing a knocked-out tooth with another can cost thousands of dollars. According to 2013 data collected by the Centers for Disease Control, only about 60% of adults could say their most recent visit was within a year. There are even people who develop serious diseases such as cancer, among other very serious ones, for the reason that annual checkups are not carried out, and that is why they realize that they have that disease when it is remarkably advanced, and there is no turning back, rather than face painful months or years. On the other hand, mentioning oral health, according to the American Dental Association, adult dental visits decreased in the decade between 2000 and 2010, so it is not surprising that around 25% of adults suffer from untreated cavities. Children's visits to the dentist improved over that same period, but they still don't get all the care they need. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, tooth decay is the most common chronic disease among school-aged children. According to Healthline, nearly 8,000 people a year die from oral and pharyngeal cancers. Undoubtedly, like the aforementioned, dental care seems like something luxurious. But if we go to reality, it should not be at all, much less health. Savings are something that the middle class definitely does not have, since it usually happens that money is always insufficient, and there are families that live only with what is necessary, and sometimes they do not make ends meet with money, always depending on salary. Emergencies or something unexpected always happens, so saving is usually something almost impossible to do. Most members of the middle class do not have at least 6 months of emergency savings, and some workers do not have such savings. A Bankrate survey found that only about 1 in 4 households have 6 months of emergency money saved, and many of them are in the highest income groups. Another quarter have no emergency savings at all, and the remaining household has a small to moderate amount of savings, but not enough to cover 6 months of expenses. This directly affects people's retirement. If they work all their lives, but still don't have enough money to save, retirement would be an unattainable dream. Not to mention that at a very old age it takes a lot of money to keep living. Medicines, money for rent, food, clothes. Much is needed, and there is very little to solve the harsh situation that the American middle class lives every day. Last but not least, the middle class has a very difficult time paying off debt. Thousands of people today find themselves in huge debts because of using credit cards. If someone from the middle class had to go to a credit card or a bank loan when they ran out of money, and after consuming that borrowed money they ran out of money again, the situation to reverse that serious lack or work until the end of their days, or win the lottery. It was discovered that more than 160 million Americans have credit cards. The average credit card holder has at least 3 cards. Not only debt is closely related to credit cards and mortgages, but also student loan debt, car debt, and medical debt. Perhaps if an acquaintance or relative has lent you money without any contract involved, well, somehow you must return that money. Undoubtedly, the United States has a big problem in all these aspects, so if you are lucky enough to invest in a profitable business, keep going and don't look back, because staying poor today is unfortunately easier than in the past. Undoubtedly, it is increasingly difficult to live in this country being part of the middle class. Although there is no need to be confused, because in other countries the situation is getting worse, so migrating would be meaningless. The smartest thing at the moment, if you are still young, is to invest in studies in order to get a good job, and thus be able to defend yourself from inflation and economic problems. Now it's your turn. What do you think about what you saw in the video? Do you think that decades ago everything was cheaper, or was it always the same? Leave me your opinion below in the comments, and if you liked the video please leave a like and subscribe to this channel to see more similar videos and activate the notification bell so that YouTube will notify you when we upload a new video. We upload videos every week, don't miss it. You will not regret.